That's insane. People are crazy. This guy, that's it. I called him Protein. How many episodes have you directed? He said, what, 600?
625.
625. And he's still getting royalties on
Every one.
Single
I afforded a limo to come here today. No cab, no Uber for me. Called up Carmel.
I'm going to give you the floor, but you grew up on some of these shows.
Oh, and, God, yes.
And it's, I mean, this is as, and I use the word, as rich a career in television as you will see. And it's amazing what he's seen through his
lens,
early sighted eyes. No, but Joel once told me, if I'm talking out of school, Joel once had a heart attack.
Oh, yes, I did.
On the set, and the EMT came.
How do you know it?
Somebody told me that. Oh. And as he was being wheeled out, he said, I need a 2-shot over here. I swear to God.
EMTs are not allowed to tell you that you're in the throes of a heart attack.
Go ahead.
They say things like, well, you know, you really ought to go to a hospital. Well, I got to do more camera blocking. I'll do it after the camera. No, I'm sorry. You really got to go to the hospital. No. And then everybody in the cast walked out on the set and refused to work any longer unless I got my ass into a car and got to the hospital. And as it turned out, it was a heart attack. And for all you, as a cautionary tale, it was driven by use of cocaine. It was a cocaine-induced heart attack. And it was at that time that you could get cocaine from craft services in television. I mean, it was so rampant in the early 80s all over TV land. But essentially, it was later on that a basketball player from University of Maryland who came, Len Bias. Thank you very much. Len Bias had a heart attack. This was a man, 6'11", phenomenal athlete, #1 draft choice for the Boston Celtics. All that stuff, and basically he passed away from a heart attack from cocaine. And at that point, the TV and film industry cleaned up pretty fast. The music industry did not. Music industry held on a little bit longer to their need for speed.
They always said it had. It wasn't cocaine. It was some kind of narrowing.
Yeah, right. It was cocaine. It was cocaine, which is not a good drug. So anyway, you've now got your cautionary tale. So anyway. What do you want to know about? What I'll tell you about me? I started out in theater, definitely in theater in New York, and basically because I couldn't figure out anything else to do in my life. When I was growing up, there was no goal orientation. You guys, it's great to see you because you all have goals. You have something you're trying to accomplish. I wasn't trying to accomplish anything. I was a lower middle class kid from Brooklyn, Sheepshead Bay section near Coney Island, and essentially, I figured I was going to have to do what every Jewish kid in my neighborhood did, which was you go to college and you become a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, a teacher, something. That was what it was going to be. So I found myself going pre-med in college. Lasted 1 year of pre-med when I realized there was no med school that would ever take me. My grades were that abysmal. So I thought I'd demote myself to pre-dent. And I did. I spent my sophomore year as pre-dent. Then I'm getting into my first part of my junior year, and I'm now in physics, organic chemistry, and having a hell of a bad time. And this was a thing from The Sopranos, or from The Godfather. I got called into a meeting with my organic chemistry teacher and my physics teacher at the same time. And they made me a deal. They said, if you swear to us that you will never go into the sciences, we will let you out of our classes. This was like after 4 weeks. I'd almost destroyed the organic chemistry lab by that point. And we'll give you D's and you can go bye-bye. So there I was for a year and a half, left to go to college. And in my day, you spent 4 years in college and you were out because you were sharing a bed with your brother who was 5 years younger than you in a 2-room apartment. You were not going to be staying in college any longer than the 4 years that you were given. So I'm sitting in, what was I sitting in? I think it was health ed with this guy sitting next to me, and I'm bemoaning the fact that I got to figure out some major I can take to get myself out of college on time. And he suggested I go meet this Professor Lair at that time, who was head of the theater department at Brooklyn College. And the guy sitting next to me turned out to be Dominic Chianese, Uncle Junior from The Sopranos. Turned out to be sitting next to me. So I went to the theater department. I did get my BA, and then immediately went to work for the Bureau of Child Welfare in New York because there was no other job. But essentially, I kind of, you know, my ethic was hard work. Hard work, and people liked you. The chances are every place you go, if you work hard and people like you, there's a chance that they're going to move you along with them as you move along. And this becomes one of your first places. If you have people here, somebody here is going to hit. The odds are that not maybe everybody, but somebody, and if they like you, the chances are you'll come along with them on the ride, and little by little, something starts to build in a career.
That has not changed.
That has not changed. That's the same thing. It's all connections. It's all connections, and people have to like. You have to. If you're not a people person, I don't know why you'd want to be in this industry. I mean, there are industries one can go into where you don't have to be a people person, where you can just kind of close yourself off in a room and do the work for the rest of your life. But ours is a people industry. You know, all things being equal, craft levels being equal, we're going to hire the people we like. It's as simple as that. It's a little painful, you know, and it isn't so much about nepotism anymore, because you've got to be able to do the job. You can't simply be given a job and have no skills for that job and expect that nepotism is going to carry you. It just doesn't do that any longer. You got to prove it on yourself. So between hard work, the hard work ethic, which is definitely lower Brooklyn middle class kind of an ethic, because it's all we had.
Here we are.
Well, here we are back in Brooklyn, you know. So basically then I did the theater, but I wasn't a director, and I was a really questionable actor. I was a character juvenile, and there were very few roles for character juveniles, and to be quite honest, there were many people who were better than me. So I wasn't doing that, but so I did this show. I was just telling Norman about this. I did this show off Broadway at the Village Gate in 1967. It was called McBird. It was a big political left-wing kind of a thing that basically made the assumption that Lyndon Johnson was responsible for the death of John Kennedy. And we used the Macbeth story, and he became McBird, and the Kennedys became Kennedunks, and we told that story. And I had my phone tapped for 7 months by the FBI for that particular thing. I was telling because one of the leads of one of his great movies was Cleavon Little from Blazing Saddles, who was with me in McBird. And we were just kind of schmoozing about that. So I did McBird and had a nervous breakdown because I didn't.
They tapped your phone?
Yeah, they tapped my phone. It was unbelievable. But there was there were things I gave up. I had a wonderful letter that I should have kept, but when you're 12 years old and really frightened, you don't keep. When I was a kid, I always dreamed of going to places all over the world. And I sent to the United Nations for brochures on every country in the world. I had this collection of brochures. One day, I got a handwritten letter from J. Edgar Hoover, wondering about why I was so interested in communist bloc nations. And I'm a 12-year-old kid, and I was so scared that I got this letter, and I basically ripped it up, burned it, and threw it away. That would have been a beaut to have that one. But anyway, so I found out that I could not survive 8 weeks, as we say in New York. The thought of doing the exact same thing 8 times every week on the exact same schedule just blew my mind. I couldn't handle it. So that was the end of that until I got a call from a friend who basically, he was working with McBird with me. His name is Andy Robinson. He's best known by you people as the Aquarius Killer and Dirty Harry.
You remember that?
That crazy
Harry?
First
Yeah,
one.
Andy could not walk down. People,
Would walk
when
away
they
from
saw
him.
him, they
Walk away from him.
spread out. It was a character.
I brought him to a place I was working, and people were very nervous. They didn't know why they were so nervous seeing him there. But anyway, he called me up and said that somebody was forming a troupe of actors at La Mama, the experimental theater down the Lower East Side. Did I want to join? Well, I didn't want to join, but I couldn't say no to Andy because I liked Andy, and I couldn't tell him, I'm sorry, Andy, but I don't leave my house. You know, I can't do that. So I went to La Mama, and it was La Mama that decided with Andy Robinson at one point that I should direct a play that Andy wrote, which was a big surprise to me because nobody had ever seen me direct anything. I'd only directed one thing for a master's thesis, but I did this one play. It was called Last Chance Saloon. It was successful. We played the West End of London, we toured Europe, and then I was a director. You know,
I saw that show at Lamont.
you're that old. How sad.
Yeah.
How truly sad.
But I lived on St. Mark's
Well,
Place.
you probably saw Last Chance of
Yes,
Lamont?
I saw it.
Oh, my goodness
I saw it
gracious.
on 3rd Street.
That's, oh my God, 4th Street, right, Lamont. So at any rate, now I'm directing, and one of the things that happened for the group I was directing, I was working with the La Mama plexus, we called ourselves, the plexus being that great part of your core that one has to be attached to as an actor, was that we were the first group in America to get word of an actor training system that was developed by Jerzy Grotowski at the Polish Lab Theater. It was called Towards an Actor, towards an actor, to a poor actor, whatever. But it was a training acting differently than Stanislavski's systems, which were driven by everything that was going on in America at that time. It was much more Reichian. It was basically training an actor like they were an athlete. And that basically you confronted fears and you confronted yourself and you basically unblocked various parts of your emotional structure that you'd used for years to protect yourself by forcing yourself into physical things that would normally scare the bejesus out of you. Headstands, flips, back bends, all that kind of stuff. And I got a chance to teach around. I taught at Yale School of Drama, I taught at Queens College, I taught at Wheaton College, teaching this form of actor training, okay? One of the guys that decided to join my group, we wrote a piece together. He wrote it and I directed it called Dance With Me, which got me onto Broadway. Got me onto Broadway, got me a Tony nomination, Drama Desk nominations, and now all of a sudden I'm directing major musicals for John Rates and Howard Keels and various people like that. And now this guy, Greg, makes his way out to California, and I'm kind of have nothing to do, so I go to visit him. And he gets into his head that I ought to direct an episode of a situation comedy that he is a co-star in. It was a thing called Busting Loose that starred Adam Arkin, who was Alan Arkin's son, in the 1977-78 season on, I guess, CBS maybe. But at any rate, so I'm hanging around, and he decides I should get a chance to direct an episode of Busting Loose. So I have to go to all these meetings. And the first meeting I took was with Paramount, a lady by the name of Judy Copage, who was running...
You dated her.
Okay, never mind. I had a child. But Judy Copage, who basically, I walked in on this meeting, and I said to her, but this is Brooklyn chutzpah, and I don't know if you can pull this off today. I said to her, listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I can direct a situation comedy, since I've never directed one, you know. Can I say that? I said, but I've watched now for a couple of weeks, and in my estimation, a retarded monkey can direct sitcoms. I said, they're not going to let me point the cameras at each other. People know their jobs. If I can talk to actors and talk to writers, you ought to give me a shot. She said, excuse me a second, dials the phone and calls up CBS. It was CBS and says, I have somebody, I'm sending him up. I want him to direct an episode of Busting Loose. And that was it. And I did direct this one episode of Busting Loose, went back to New York, did a show off Broadway, noticed that the same producers had another show going on TV, wrote to them saying, if there's anything for me, I'd love to come out and direct again. And I came back, and that's when it started. I met Gary Marshall and some of the big wigs, and then spent 2 years directing Laverne and Shirley, which at the time I directed, it was the #1 show in America. That was a nice way to begin a career. Out there, and then moved on to Mork and Mindy, and I was the first one. I brought in Tom Hanks, Bosom Buddies, and I was there with Robin Williams in his first Mork and Mindy's, and then onwards and upwards through Perfect Strangers and Full House and Family Matters and Step by Step, and then any number of those shows which I'm sure you people grew up on, which is only slightly exciting, but but it's okay. I don't know what other way it can be, so it's just that's the way it's going to be. You'll have grown up on me. And then I took off from about 1999 or 2000. I got into a point where television, by then I had done well over 500 episodes, and I thought, oh God. And I was kind of watching my trajectory of my career slowly heading this way. And I decided that maybe I'm just going to get the hell out of TV. That's all. I'll just take a gap. My business managers, can I just walk away from TV? Oh yeah, as long as you pay smart, you have enough money, you don't have to stay in TV any longer. At that point, I was looking at independent films. I thought that there was a cachet for people who could direct comedy in independent films because it's not an easy thing to direct. So I'm looking, and I had a script that I thought was pretty darn funny, and I sent it off to Tom Hanks to look at. So I get a call from Hanks saying, what's this all about? And I said, well, I'm going to get out of TV, Tom. I've got these scripts. I think I can do it. And he said, well, this is a pretty good script, and went ahead and gave me detailed notes on it. He actually paid some attention to the damn thing and said, but I've got a script that I'm going to produce as an independent comedy. Why don't you direct that for me? And at that point, I would have directed the phone book if Tom had called me up and said, you want to direct the phone book? And he sends me the script for My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So I go, okay, wow. And so there I was in features. And I spent about 10 years in features. I'm so old. As I go through this, I get to rip myself how bloody old I am. But then I basically, after, I wouldn't do what Hollywood wanted me to do. But I was old. You may have to do what Hollywood wants you to do, by the way. I didn't. At my age, at about that time, I was about 63. And was determined that they wanted me to direct Hilary Duff in movies. And they wanted me to direct Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen in a movie. And I just wasn't going to do that. It seemed to me that those were jobs that other people could do better than me. I wasn't into that. So little by little, Hollywood stopped sending you scripts. They'll do that. They decided I was not one of the go-to people that was going to help them at all. So I was out of that, and I was basically into retirement, or what normal tell you is called development hell. You sit around developing scripts in the hope and prayer that something somewhere grabs on, and you're holding on to a script. It's 10 years, and there's still a possibility this movie is going to get made. And we used to talk about what? It was about a 10-year process to get a movie made? Easy 10 years. And then all of a sudden, the right people get together, the right this goes together, and you get a movie made. But anyway, so I was doing nothing but developing hell when my daughter, who by this point has graduated USC, is working in the business and this and that and the other thing. She gets a job at the Disney Channel. And one day I take her out to lunch. I get a call from her that afternoon. My bosses just realized who my father is, and they were wondering, would you come to the Disney Channel and direct some shows for us? So I said to her, Hillary, is this going to help your career? And she said, I think so. I said, good. Then you tell them I'll direct anything you tell me to direct. But I knew my daughter. She's a star. She's now director of development for Disney. And I've been working this last 5 years directing Disney shows, working with kids. And it's a blessing. I work with animals and kids. But the fact still remains that they don't have egos. I don't have any star with an ego having to do it their way, the way they want, when they want, and I'll come out of my dressing room when I'm ready. No, these kids are very responsible, you know, and they just do what it is they can do and just go do it. So I've been having a ball. So I'm now up to about 625 various sitcoms that I do, and it's been a good job. It's a good job. And you guys are all wanting to be writers. Well, I believe
writers and producers, showrunners. They want to be showrunners. And I want you to speak to our lone Greek person over here. I promised her that, and she's writing a script this year about, it's called Astoria, about the Greek mob
in the story of Queens.
Yeah. So maybe you'll direct it. It's Jamie.
Jamie, my son's name is Jamie. He's still pissed off at me for naming the girl's name, by the way. He had such a hard time. And I was into this unisex thing at the time. I thought that was pretty cool. Jamie, that'll be my son's name. Boy, when he went to school, he was so unhappy with me. There were 4 other people in the class with Jamie, and they were all girls. But yeah, the writing is the key. And I'm not sure you can show run any longer without being the titular writer, the guy who created the series or wrote the series or is the head writer for the series. There are producers and line producerships where you're basically controlling production and production elements of a show, but that is not the head writer or the showrunner. And there's no question that what's happening now is that the best writers are gravitating toward television. The difference being, when I did My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I was in control of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, despite the fact that Nia Vardalos wrote it and was starring in it. The feature films is a director's medium. And unless you gain an enormous amount of power base as a writer, you're not going to have much input. Matter of fact, there are movies that I've done where the writers were not even allowed on the set. Never mind anything else. That's it. And now, of course, if you, as a writer, if your credits start to grow enough and you start to demand certain things, you can demand certain things. But as you start out, it's all within the realm of the director. But where you go to TV now, all of a sudden, it's a writer's medium, totally a writer's medium. The writers are in control of everything that's going on. They cast the show, they set the tone of the show, they set the storytelling methodology of it. Now, they may bring in a director they really like that will help them set a visual tone for the show. Yeah. Should that show be shot single camera with a handheld? Should it be shot any number of ways that they believe storytelling should be told? But it's all in the purvey of the writers. So the best writers are writing for HBO. They're writing for that, you know, because the fact is they're in control. And they love the fact they can develop a character over seasons. As opposed to you get an hour and 20-minute movie, and that's it. You've developed your characters. They're over unless you're sequelizing for the rest of your life on these characters. That's it. You've done it. But you can grow a character through years, and writers love that. But
that is the premise of this program, which is why did I choose television? Most of my career was in film, but this is where the best writing is being done. And this is where you are king or queen.
No question about it.
No
question about that. And you may want to bring in some people that matter to you, a director who sees things the way you like things being seen. But the fact is, it's going to be your control, not the director's control.
In your estimation, what is the arc of their? When are they going to be writing on a show?
Well, right now.
First job.
The first job is to, I always used to say, and to some degree it's holding up, although it breaks down now and today, is the old spec script. You know, if you can produce a little short, you've got all kinds of access to the internet and YouTubes and places that you can show your stuff. But the bottom line is that you better have the craft behind it, being able to produce 1 7-minute thing. And then all of a sudden get thrown into a situation where you're now being asked to write a much longer form. You better have some craft behind you, or you're going to implode.
I'm glad you said that, because when you and I started, it was a spec script.
Spec script.
Now it's let's hear and see your
original. We can hear and see. We can do the sizzle reels you're talking about. We can do all that kind of stuff now that gives us a chance to get into the marketplace. The problem is that as this thing has exploded, so to speak, when we were getting into the business, there were only a handful of us. We were competing against a handful of people who were lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, as we used to say. Nowadays, we don't have to be in any place or any time when you've got a computer in front of you. So now you're competing not just with the schleps like us. You're competing with a world of people from Duluth, Minnesota, from Nebraska, who are out there doing the same thing. And it all comes down to, all I can think is that it comes down to, in the final analysis, paying a lot of dues on craft, paying a lot of dues and hard work. And those that are most ingenious about their hard work, who put it out there, who are forward thinking about what they do, they have the better chance of success.
Yep.
No question about it. If you're going to be, you could be an honestly brilliant writer, but if you don't find a way to basically market yourself, in this world today, it's a marketing world. Ours was not a marketing world. They didn't know who the hell we were until we came up with something that somebody noticed. But everybody in your world has got to market. You got to do both, which is a horrible thing. As an artist, you should never have to be put in this position where you've got to put out there and market your own work. You should be able to do your own work and then hand it to somebody who markets it. But I'm afraid that that's not going to get you in the competitive world. As it is, the percentages of people who make it in show business are infinitesimally small, no question about it. And that's amongst people who are actually trying to play the game as the game must be played. If you're one of those people who have decided that you're not going to play the game as being played because you're something beyond that, either because you have an intellect or a storytelling ability or something, your odds become even less. They just do. I mean, it doesn't mean that won't happen for somebody. It might very well happen for somebody that somebody in this class is going to write a film script and it actually becomes produced. And all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of it all. But those odds are so infinitesimally small that you basically have to just figure that it's a working job like any other job. You just have to get in there, pay the dues, and write. And that's what I believe about writers. They should be writing. You should be writing and writing and writing and writing. And the more prolific you are and the more you stick with writing, the better you're going to become. You know, and there are prototypes for, you know, why is it that the sitcom has a certain format? And why is it that the procedurals on TV have a certain format? And why is it that features have a certain format? And they all throw this language at you if you're willing to hear it consistently. You know, the 5-act structure in this, it's a 3-act structure in the films. It's a 5-act structure in the procedurals. It's a 3-act structure in the sitcoms. And to some degree, you are forced into that structure. Maybe less in the features, because I think a freestanding feature, if it's compelling, let's say like Greek Wedding, I don't know that Greek Wedding followed any particular storytelling device. You know, yes, it had a flashback at the beginning, it told its story, but I don't know that it was I didn't even think of it as it was in 5 acts or 3 acts or anything. I didn't think that at the end of the first act, this has got to. None of that was going on in my head. So it's possible in the world of features that you can be you can invent. You can invent form. You can invent structure. You can invent tone. Cannot do that in television. Television, if they want a 5-act structure to a procedural, that's because they need commercials. And that's why you're going to write in 5 acts, you know? Now, if you're lucky enough, there's some places now where, you know, in cable and what have you, or FX or Amazon's making product now. It's all over the place. So,
but great stuff.
Yeah,
and they were in. We had the head of Amazon original programming last week, Joe Lewis, and you know, it got transparent. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, no question about it. It's a boon to people who want to write, but writers still have to write. No matter what you do, they still got to write. It doesn't make a difference. How, you know, but anybody who, with the internet and the speed of us sending material through the airwaves, anybody who owns distribution is stupid if they're not creating product. As simple as that. Why should I, who own a distribution system, go to CBS and pay for the product that CBS is making to put out so that I can distribute it for them? Why would I do that? I'll do House of Cards. I'll do Orange is the Next Black. I will create product, and because of it, what they do, it's happened with the HBOs originally, to get the better writers to go to cable out of network TV, they gave them an enormous amount of power. They were able to do what they wanted to do without some network official coming down and saying, we don't like the second act. They were able to get away and do that. So all of them were leaving network TV to go to cable. And now they're leaving cable to move on to these various other services because of the fact that they have more freedom. And most writers will accept creative freedom. I mean, to be quite honest, any of these jobs will pay you more than enough to make you happy for a long time.
So will directors, by that. I called Barry Levinson. We went to high school together. After he did You Don't Know Jack.
Oh, yes.
And he, on HBO, and he said, this is the best experience I've ever had. They let me say what I wanted to say. They left me alone. And now on network shows, they don't have to come to the set. They used to come to the set and give you notes. Now they don't even have to do that. They can stay in CBS
Radford. Just watching on the screen and giving notes.
Give you notes.
I was matter of fact, I was doing it on Disney Channel. I walked up with this girl who's a Disney representative for the show. And Disney is a little tricky because not just are they the studio, they are the network, they are the producers. So the power base that a Disney executive has when they walk on the set is fairly bigger than you would want. And she was getting, the exec producer who was sitting there working the show with me, she was constantly on her cell phone. And I didn't know why she wasn't paying attention to the show. I thought that would be a better thing to do. And she's getting notes texted to her based on a scene that was just done. You know, so it's a corporate business. Creativity is corporate. And you can't get yourself crazy about the fact that they don't know. They may not know what you know, but they got some knowledge of stuff that you have no idea about that they're trying to adhere to. So I found out it took a while to respect. respect that they're coming from a different place, you know, than I am. They're not creatively involved on my level, but they are servicing needs that have to be serviced. So it's a little easier to get into negotiations with them, to discuss with them what exactly is it that's in your little brain and what can we do about, you know, extricating it so I can get on with shooting the scene. But that was what was going on. And nowadays, a little of those rules are breaking, but it's all about writing. I learned that as a director for many years, and in the hopes and prayers somehow that it was about directing, I realized it was never about directing. The director is a secondary creator. I must have the words and I must have the actors.
Yeah. Could you describe a good relationship between you and a writing team on a show and maybe a not so good relationship? Like what worked and what didn't work?
Well, what works best is the director has, I will do things, you know, but some of that has to be, once again, it's a question of politics. If you're around having done 615, 20 episodes, people will tend to listen to you more than doing your first sitcom. So we understand that. But abusing it is still not the point. It's still not the point of walking out there and saying, well, I've done 600 episodes. I'm going to do it exactly the way I want to do it. You're still in negotiations. But the fact is, I'll see something that didn't work at a run-through, let's say. And the producers are saying, well, we'll get rid of that. I said, no, don't get rid of that. I can make that work. That's a great piece of writing. And of course, the politics is, I use the expression, that's a fabulous piece of writing. Do not give up on your writing yet. Let me get another pass at it. And I can hold on to things in shows that might normally be expunged within the first run through by writing staff saying, who's looking to bring down the length of the show to proper time, who's looking to find what really works and get away from stuff that they think isn't working. And I will fight for stuff that they wrote that I think is better than they know, and I want to get another shot at it. That's the best when it works that way. By far, it's the best. I don't mess with certain shows. Okay, it's very hard to say that there was no improvisation going on with Robin Williams and Mork and Mindy. It's very hard to say that we weren't developing stuff on stage with Bronson Pinchot and Mark Lynn Baker in Perfect Strangers. We were. Those are the natures of buddy comedies. Laverne and Shirley, we were constructing scenes on our feet for that show. Same thing with Bosom Buddies, same thing with Perfect Strangers. However, Full House was as written. You were not sitting around improvising around, a 2-year-old girl who's basically mimicking or aping somebody else's lines. You had to be able to, you were playing the lines. Interestingly enough, Perfect Strangers, an average Perfect Strangers script, we would start shooting at approximately 27 pages long. An average Full House script, 50 pages long. The difference of the genres. With Perfect Strangers, we were out there creating dances of joy. I don't know, they were singing, they break out into song, they get on a couch, they dance. God only knows what they would do. But the fact was that some of that stuff was us coming up with stuff, and then the writers would look at it and go, oh, that's good. And they'd be upstairs and they started to write like crazy to find it, you know.
But the same producers.
Yeah.
Same producers, but different ways to run
running a show. It was interesting, the people who, but you kind of know that if you're going to do a buddy comedy where 90% of the soul of a show is the relationship between two buddies. Oh, then the buddies have got to find what that relationship is about, and then the writers have to do a little catching up, because more of that will be found as we're playing on the stage than will be found by them writing in a room. You know, it was interesting with Perfect Strangers. I remember we were doing the pilot, and Perfect Strangers was written by Dale McCraven, who had also written Mork and Mindy. And he thought he was going to use the same prototype system, meaning in Mork and Mindy, he was an alien coming down to America who had no idea what the rules were, and we found Robin Williams, who was perfect for that role. Well, Perfect Strangers was Balky, who was a character from some mythical island called Mypos, somewhere near Greece, theoretically, who has no idea what's going on in America and talks with a strange accent also. And that's what he thought he was going to write. He was going to write another stranger in a strange land kind of a situation comedy. Now, I'm in the rehearsals, literally the first day of rehearsals, and we're in a 5-minute break. And things are going along fine. These are very, very talented actors, you know what they're doing. And I'm looking over to the side, and there's Bronson and Mark doing, I don't know if you know the expression from comedy called Lazzi, physical activities that are based on nothing particular except some stupidity of tying a tie or doing something that's ridiculous. And they were off running routines. And I looked over at these guys and I went, and they were great, picking up ties, slapping each other in the face, doing all this kind. And I called the writers down and said, you guys have got to come to the set and see what these guys do. And they were blown away. And all of a sudden the show became physical, which was very verbal as we started the pilot. By the time we finished the pilot, it became a much more physical show as the writers start to write into. And those are when it works best. If anybody's holding on to something as sacrosanct, I don't care if it's the writer or the director, you got yourself a big problem. You've got fucks. And of course, in my case, I just let the writer get what he wants. If he says, that's what I want, then he deserves the right, because that's what TV is all about. He will get what he wants.
Which is another great thing about television, which you write the script and you have a director say, okay, well, get what's written, and you've got some improvisational people there. We have a couple of people here who are at UCB. And get the script and then pull the ripcord, let them go.
Yeah, so and it depends
if you have faith in them.
If you have, well, it takes creative guts to be able to understand that the process is a process where you want to take everybody working on the process, create an environment where everybody can do their best work. And their best work will not be done if you're telling everybody what to do. That I can guarantee. After hundreds of these things, that does not work. However, it takes an awful lot of confidence in yourself as an artist to be able to understand how much you can let go and where it is that bottom line happens that you got to kind of hold on to, or the thing falls apart. You know, but essentially, that's what my job that's what I've evolved my job into, was that it was going to be, I was going to get the camera operators to be I now yell at camera operators because they're not, I said, why are you doing that shot? And they said, well, that's what you told me to do. I said, do you want to see that shot on TV? They go, oh, no, that's not a good shot. So I said, so why are you shooting it? Well, I thought that's what you wanted. I said, I'm not interested in what you think I want. I'm interested in what you think is the best possible shot you could give me at that particular moment. And you get 4 camera operators buying that, and all of a sudden, I don't camera block. I literally do not camera block on a sitcom. It blows away certain producers. I'm working with Michael, Boy Meets World, what? Jacobs, Michael Jacobs now. Michael Jacobs had 17.
What's that show?
Girl Meets World, based on Boy Meets World.
You know, is that coming back?
Yeah. It's a big hit for Disney
Can you
Channel.
hire anybody? Okay.
I don't know. But the fact is that Michael, I do the first episode for him, and we're doing scenes from him. He says, you didn't camera block. I said, no, I don't camera block. He says, what do you mean you don't camera block? I said, I don't camera block. He said, but you got all the shots that I was expecting to see. I said, well, that's good, but I don't camera block. He said, how can you not camera block? Now I've done about 10 episodes from him. He's beginning to understand that I just talk to the cameras and I expect them to do the job that they're supposed to do. I expect the director, I expect the actors to do what they're supposed to do. I'm not telling the actors what to do either.
I did a show with Ellen Burstyn and Elaine Stritch. And
Elaine wow.
Stritch, one of the greatest performers
Ever
on earth. She's gone now.
Just recently.
She couldn't hit any marks. And one of the cameramen said to me, don't worry about it. I've shot hockey games.
I'll follow
and he got her. And I knew I could trust them.
And if you build the trust as a creative community, whether you're the head of the creative community as the writer, or you're a secondary creator as the director, or whoever you are, if you can build that trust and have enough faith in yourself as a creative artist to understand, like when I think through a scene as a director, I try to think through every permutation and combination of that scene as how it might be staged. Why do I think it should be staged this way? Why couldn't it also be staged that way? And I go through as many of those permutations as I can, and then I finally come down to the way I visually think the story needs to be told, because in the final analysis, that's all we're doing is storytelling. And if you're not telling the story visually the same way the writers wrote the story, you got yourself a big problem on your hands. Why is it that these 2 people should be standing together and this person should be by himself? Well, it's probably because something in the situation occurs, the fact that these 2 people are doing something against this one person. Now, that can also be done by putting that one person into the middle of the 2 people. That's another way to approach that particular scenario of 2 people against one. But that's all you got. I don't have any other options with 3 people. I can do 3 singles, 1, 2, 3, and I can separate all 3 like that. Or I can put 2 against 1, or I can put 2 against 1. I can put all 3 together and stick somebody in the middle. And that's it. After that, the story is told. I don't have any other options in how to tell that story.
Considering how much the industry has turned into a collaborative experience and how much compromise is a factor in the creation of these stories and what is put onto the set and like when you make it, when you write it, how do you find a good balance of like maintaining that compromise but still maintaining individual integrity when you're coming into it? So like,
Well, yeah, that's a very good question, and there's really no very good answer for that. It's something we evolve into. Like I said, as you become confident in yourself as an artist, as a writer, I assume, if you become confident in your writing ability, the need to have to hold on to anything specific gets lessened. It's only when you're young and beginning that you don't have enough control on. Like I say, I can tell you every aspect of how a scene should be shot because I've done it so often. And any writer who's written as many things as I've directed can tell you the same thing. I could tell that story one of 6 ways. I've chosen to tell the story this way. And there are certain areas where you need to be in control as a writer, and there's certain areas I need to be in control as a director. It's not up for grabs. If I'm going to do a scene where people are sitting at a table having dinner, I'm going to damn well tell them where to sit. This is not an improvisation. I have a plan of how to shoot this scene, and you will all sit exactly at the table where I want you to sit. That is not up for negotiations. However, some actor may say to me, well, you know, is it okay? I don't have lines for 2 pages. Can I get up and go to the sink and get a glass of water? Can I go to the refrigerator and get this? And I would look at that and go, sure, why not? That's a great idea, you know? But essentially, I always found that we as people bring our integrity with us to whatever it is we're doing. And that it's not anything that anybody can basically take away from you. I just keep on redefining it to work for me. So I can tell you. But essentially, it's corporate creativity, and it's political, and it's social. And if unless you're one of those lucky people who are that bloody well gifted, who can write their own thing and have it take them to the top. I mean, we have them around. We have auteurs. We have the Coen brothers. We have people like that who basically do exactly what they want to do, but they have to do it in a certain budget constraint. They're not going to be given $250 million for the Coen brothers to make a movie, but if they can churn out something, they've proven that if they stay in the $25 to $30 million range for a movie, they can do anything they damn well want. You know, so we do have auteurs that have come along that do exist, and that can be something that should stick in your head too.
And Vin Diesel, don't forget.
Vin Diesel, the auteur of all of it.
I have a follow-up, that's all right. When do you find in scripts that are given to you that you then have to direct where the stage directions are too constraining, where you have to
Yeah, I don't pay attention to them. Every once in a while, I'll have the producers come up to me and say, "You see that those words in the heavy black print?" I'll go, "Oh yeah, what are those?" Well, those are the stage direction. Now, they really don't care. There are times when you read a stage direction and you know that they want something to happen in a certain place.
Okay.
And then you do it. However, if I see that and I go, "Guys, you've just written me 4 scenes in a row in the kitchen. There is no reason that one of these scenes can't be moved into the living room or into somebody's bedroom. Can I do that?" They go, "Oh yeah, definitely. We were just giving it." And basically what happens is when you work with the same director over and over, you find yourself very much less specific about stage directions because you know that the director will be able to handle that world for you pretty well, especially if it's a simple world like the world of sitcom. But actually, for all its simplicity, it probably has sometimes the most stage directions involved because we have all kinds of hoo-ha that goes on.
Yeah.
What was the gag? It was only 1/8 of a page, but and then World War II starts. Yeah,
There was a chase.
Yeah, there was a
French Connection.
French Connection. I got this hat style from French Connection, but I have one at home that's even closer.
Yeah.
But anyway, Popeye Doyle, wasn't his name?
I think we're doing great. Questions? Other questions?
Okay, go.
Go.
I guess along that same line, are there certain elements that'll attract you to a script or make you want to direct a script more? Or?
I have my area of, if there's any area of expertise at all, it's I'm a comedy director. However, I consider it to be more of I'm one of these actor people. I like actors. I actually have gone to lunch with actors, which is really not a good thing to do, by the way. But at any rate, I'm an actor-centric director. So therefore, any piece that's driven by actors, be it comic or serious, it's in my, I believe that's where I live. You know, if it's visionary, not the best person to bring in for visionary work. You know, I'm not going to be doing those kind of things, nor would anybody in their right mind hire me to do that. But, you know, if it involves human relationship and it's about simple storytelling, which is what Greek Wedding was all about, it was very simple storytelling. It was nothing particularly ornate or overly blown up about what that was going to be about. I don't know, maybe somebody could have taken that movie and turned it into a visual treat, but not on the budget I was handed, that's for sure.
But Joel has the ability and the experience to have, and you'll be interested in this, Andrew. He does theater. He went from film to theater, and he's directing. You directed a Gershwin piece, and your producers, Bob Boyette, for example. Bob Boyette is a major theater producer, and he got his start, made his fortune in TV, but then how many shows has he produced? He produced the Monty Python show.
No. Bob Boyette he left TV after pretty much at the time where I started to watch my career going like this was when Boyette and Miller and Gary Marshall, who were my mentors at that time, who produced all those, the Laverne and Shirley straight through, the Family Matters and Step by Steps and all those shows. They all decided to get out of TV. Gary moved into features, and very well with Pretty Woman and a few other little things he managed to touch on to. And Bob Boyette decided to leave TV and went into the theater, where he had probably produced about 6 Tony-winning shows, and now he's going back into TV.
Yeah.
We're talking about now doing a show for the FX network called Fuller House. And we're just on, stop it, don't even make that grimace, that's painful. But the fact is, they're going to bring back Candace Cameron, who played DJ, and they're bringing back Kimmy Gibbler, who played, Andrea Barber, who played Kimmy Gibbler. And they have families of their own now, and this is going to be called Fuller House. And my fear is that I'm going to get a call from Bob saying, hey, Joel. And I'm going to have to do it to Bob. I have to do it. There are just certain things you build in a career. There are people who meant that much to you that that becomes the next thing you must do. End of story. You know, so I keep. I'm waiting. Any day now, they're going to get the word from FX, and I'm going to call from Bob Boyette.
I thought you were talking about Bob Saget.
No, Saget's another one.
Yeah.
He'll come up. He'll come up. They'll use him for various things.
So explain. Talk to me about this. What are writers? And I tell them I feel very strongly that they will be better writers here. They don't have to stay here, but to start. I'm not warning them against going to LA. You live in LA, but I really speak.
You don't need to be in LA. This is not the time for that. You need to be in situations where you feel safe and somewhat nurtured in terms of getting your work done. Because nowadays, you come up with a script. You don't need to be in LA to have, you're not hawking your script in LA. You've got the internet. You've got all kinds of ways of getting your material around. We're no longer centric to, you must be in LA to be able to make it into either film or TV. It just isn't the case. You have to find places where you feel you are getting a chance to keep writing. As we said at the beginning, it's all about willingness to just keep writing. I mean, there are people out there, they blow my mind with how prolific they are. They just keep writing. And they set a discipline for writing. There's no fooling around. Their time for writing is going to be whatever it is. I'm getting up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm on a ritual, and I'm going to write until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not getting up from the damn desk until I've done that. And I don't care if I think I've got writer's block. I don't think, if I can't think of an idea, I'm going to sit there, and then I'm going to just start to write. And the other thing I always tell writers is, don't edit yourself, if at all possible. Don't edit yourself. Leave that up to the next level of places to get that done. Write freely. Write what you want. Don't get yourself overly concerned with, ooh, this is the longest scene the world has ever seen. There's no way this scene things. Don't get that into that right now. You got to just allow yourself to free flow with writing, and you allow people like Norman, if you're in this kind of situation, look at it and say, excuse me, but a 47-page scene, was there any way that it could possibly be a little shorter? Was the 3.5-page monologue really necessary for a subsidiary character? The maid walks in and we don't need that. Let somebody else start to help you in terms of tightening you down and structuring you. Don't do too much of that yourself, especially if it's getting into your head and you're realizing that you're finding yourself editing more than you're writing. There'll be a time for rewrites. I was just talking to in the room. The other room was that you do this whole thing and you finally solve the ending of your piece, only to find out that the beginning has absolutely nothing to do with the ending you just created. And now you're going back and you're going to try to find the beginning to this piece that now is exactly ending where you want, and things are starting to modify. Because any writer will tell you it's about rewriting. It's not about writing. Because you just have to keep rewriting it, and then you bring in somebody. If you bring in a director that's trustful because you think you're going to get this thing shot somewhere, then that director helps you structure in the rewrites and where it is that he feels things are going on too long or too short. Do you really need that scene? And what good is that scene doing us? And you know, those kind of things come into play a little bit later on. But the ability to tell stories and learn how to tell a story. You know, eventually they'll give you a form that you have to tell the story in, you know, be it a 7-minute form or a 22-minute form like a sitcom, or what is it, a 49 minutes form for procedurals, or they add commercials all the time, so it's hard to know what time it goes for nowadays. But each of these things are forms of how to tell a story in X amount of time that they give you, you know, and it's daunting, but the skill is obvious. It's all over the place. You can see it. You can, to this day, you can still go and say, "What's my favorite show on TV?" All right, I like NCIS, or I'm a comedy guy and I really love. Yeah. Okay. All right. And you can take a look at that, and you can see exactly how good your ear is by trying to write one of those shows. Now, you're never going to get that show to do your script. In the old days, you could do that. Can't do that anymore because the show will not see that script for fear that there's an idea in that script that they're working on themselves, and they're afraid of lawsuits because that's happened to them. However, that piece of writing can go to a different show who takes a look at it and goes, wow, these people this guy was really able to capture this show. This guy must have some So there are ways to do that still today, but the key is to keep writing. Keep writing, and if some of it is basically seeing if you can write an NCIS or seeing if you can write a Two Broke Girls, good luck to you on that one, you know, or whatever that's all about, because that's the one that strikes you as interesting. You should do that, as long as you keep writing. You know.
What's your favorite show on television right now, or what shows in general do you like?
It's like a busman's holiday for me. I try to catch one of everything, and I think there's some terrific stuff on television. Never been better. Television has never been better. I probably, let me see, of current shows, I'm more of an HBO person at this particular point. I do like House of Cards a lot. I do like Game of Thrones a lot. I find those things to be fascinating, even though there's not a chance in hell that I would ever wind up directing any of them. You know,
Those would be fun episodes.
yeah, the Game of Thrones is a comedy. No question about it. But I do think the TV is doing some of the best work. But for me, it's a busman's holiday. So when I need to get home after working all day long on a set shooting a show, the last thing I'm really overly interested in is sitting in front of the TV and saying, "Ooh, must be maybe a good comedy zone." No, that doesn't work for me at that particular point. You know, no, yeah.
What would you like to see on TV that's not necessarily there right now? Where do you think something that you wish something would come back? You wish there would be something that was different about something that you see?
Yeah, I'd like it to. It's happening in bits and pieces because there's very little that isn't happening. But I'm a little bit, shall we say, off the beaten path. I like things that are basically moving in directions you're surprised by. I like it a little more fantastical. Myself, my own thinking about things. I have no problem when perfect strangers get up on a couch and start to sing "To Dream the Impossible Dream." Who does that? You know, it's just not something that I'm not interested in trying to portray real life on TV. I'm interested in this artistic representation that soars with I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Soars with fancy, elates me. I don't know, but those are the things I like. You know, I was. You know, I like bosom buddies. I like the guys dressing up as girls. God, were they ugly girls.
What don't you like?
What?
What don't you like?
Well, there are shows that I think really stink. I caught an episode or two of Two Broke Girls and thought that may have been the worst piece of writing I'd ever seen on TV. And there are some that sit in that genre that really fail considerably. And it amazes me that they stay on TV, but I guess that's just the nature of TV today. If you can hammock your show in a certain place, you know. And then sometimes the shows grow. Initially, I thought The Goldbergs was a horrible show. Yet I caught an episode and I thought, wow, they got better.
Yeah.
They got better.
Yeah.
Because if you take enough talented people, give them enough time and let them have a lease on life, they will get better. You know, so it's really so much more about the concept than about the execution. Execution will slowly but surely get better. It's what concept are you dealing with? What in the final analysis, as we used to say, no matter what you do in sitcom, it all comes down to either a family or a workplace. And in the workplace, there is a family. So it's something, and it was going back to the Dick Van Dyke Show, it goes back to Barney Miller, it goes back to all these workplace comedies. They took everybody at the workplace and made them a family. Or they were doing a family show. Sometimes they'd be half the time in the family and half the time in the workplace. But each place was a family. And it's
Mary
in that
Tyler Moore, remember
Mary
the
Tyler
last episode where they loved each other so much they couldn't stop hugging
hugging. That's right.
all the way to the door
They're
and
still
then
hugging.
back. They just couldn't leave each other. That was such a sweet ending.
That was a fabulous ending for a show. But yeah, so you know, it's there's nothing like I say. There's no genre. There's no way of telling a story that's brand new. They've all been around. It's your own little interpretation. I am a little bit off the wall, and therefore appreciate things that are more off the wall. It's as simple as that. That's who I've always been when I was working at La Mama. I was in avant-garde experimental theater, for Christ's sakes. And people kept saying to me, how do you go from La Mama to Laverne and Shirley? And I said, easily, more money. But also what I realized at Laverne and Shirley was, yes, I had the integrity of La Mama, where everything was being done the way I wanted to do it. But I had great actors at Laverne and Shirley, far better than anything I was able to work with at La Mama. And that was a nice trade-off for me, working with Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams. They took me to school in terms of how comedy is done. And then add David Landers and Michael McKean to that, and you had yourself quite a little ensemble that was very refreshing to work with those with that level of acting talent made all the difference to me.
And Michael McKean is back on Better Call Saul.
I know that, God bless him.
Yeah.
But he was a good actor. I expected him to survive
Yeah.
the early days of TV, and he did. You know, but that's all it really is. It's just my thing is I'm a little off center, and I find things that interest me. Like I remember we had an episode of what were we doing? Shake It Up, and somehow they had written this tag. Tag meaning the last 2 pages because you need a commercial break, then you come back to a tag, and God knows why. And the tag was that they wrote it was that when the mother of Cece, one of the characters, somehow wound up in her locker at school. So when she opened the locker, there was her mother. This was one of the things that the producers wanted to get rid of immediately. And I said, give me one more day. I think I can make this work. And I found a way to jam her mother into that bloody locker. And let me tell you, when she opened that locker and I found her mother there in the locker, that was a very big moment. You know, Mark Lindbergh produced one of the greatest moments I've ever seen on television. It was so long, I laughed, that we had to cut it down. It was outrageous. He was in a snowstorm somewhere there in a mountain hut, one of the great classic sitcom shows where they were somewhere in a mountain place, and there was an avalanche. Mark Lindbergh had gone off in order to solve the problem of the avalanche. And all of a sudden, there's this avalanche, and he's shaking, and they run to open the door, and there's Marklin Baker. It's flat against the door in a snowbank. It was hysterical, but those are the kinds of things that are decidedly not real. In real, he's dead. Really, probably doesn't go out into an avalanche. But the fact still remains, so that we do take those leaps of faith for comedy. And that's why comedy interests me, obviously, because you can take more leaps of faith, I think, in comedy than perhaps in a drama, which is supposed to follow certain rules of human behavior.
Do you mean more like the suspension of reality?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
You know, and that's tone, that's style of writing. You know, there'll be writers who are very much into trying to depict, like painters, depicting real stuff and painting it, you know, Rembrandts who could do that for you. And then there were others who saw a world that was decidedly eschewed from the real world. You know, there were the Picassos and all those painters, the Mirots, who were doing their own thing. And you as a writer that's going to be your bread and butter. The rest of it's just the craft that you learn to fit into a format. But the vision that you have and your sensibility that you bring to the paper is what makes every one of you different. I mean, it's the reason why I could sit in a room and cast a role and have 10 actors show up for the same role who are all quite capable of playing that role. And they're given the exact same direction, and there isn't a single one of them that feels or sounds like anyone else. They just don't. And the casting trick is to pick the one that you think's humanity best works for the character as you wish it to grow and explore. Because remember, as a writer for a series, that character is going to grow on you. And it's going to become a meld upon what you want and what the actor is capable of doing best. With it, coaching through a director. That's the way the thing grows. And you can't, you got to allow that to exist as a creative artist. You can't control that because it's going to grow and you have to grow with it. You have to modify the characters as it goes, modify the situation, add in a character. Family Matters. Very pleasant comedy, very much ahead of its time because it was an all-black family. And it was episode 12 that a little kid from next door showed up, Steve Urkel, and the whole show changed and went on for 250 episodes with poor Jaleel White playing Steve Urkel when he was 21 years old, still wearing those high-water pants, talking with that stupid voice. But the fact was that this grows. The producers saw that and they went, oh my God, it's a new series.
Yeah.
We got to write a new series. Urkel. It's now about Urkel. And we'll make Urkel and Pop. And they just had to go from scratch because of some unfortunate or fortunate circumstance that occurred in casting. And it happens all over the place.
What about Fonzie?
The Fonzie.
It was Ron Howard's show.
Totally.
And I was in the office that day, and Ron was sitting on the couch, and I said, "Are they throwing you out?" And sure enough, they were telling him it's going to be this guy in the leather jacket, and
Yeah.
that whole show changed.
Well, Ron did a very bright thing. He said he finally negotiated a clause that he makes the same money as Henry Winkler. And by the time they finished, they were doing, and this was in the 1970s, 70s into the 80s, they were making $100,000 an episode. And I remember it was in 1980 or so, when I was doing Laverne and Shirley, that the women were just starting to get really pissed. And they had every right to. Suzanne Summers was kicking up a huge storm on Three's Company. Penny and Cindy were out of their minds that they had the #1 show in America and they were making half the salary of Henry Winkler and Ron Howard at the time. And I couldn't get them out of their dressing rooms. They were in meetings with ABC and they were meetings with this and that and the other thing because they wanted parody. They thought that was crazy. And the industry was just starting to explode at that time, trying to get the beginnings of parody for women in a marketplace where they were being completely not paid at the level that everybody else was. So eventually Suzanne left Three's Company. Penny and Cindy stayed on and got enormous bumps and raises that started to bring them much closer to Ron and to Henry. But those were interesting times because it was the beginning of getting African Americans onto TV, minorities, women being expressed as real people as opposed to a function of somebody's sick imagination. These things were starting to erupt in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a fascinating time to be around it, to be quite honest. And it's amazing to me that close to 40 years later, it hasn't changed enough. That's what's amazing to me. All that stuff that was going on still hasn't changed enough. But it's got to. I don't see how it cannot, but it's amazing me how long it's taken. And we're still battling the same battles. Same battles. Okay, anybody else got anything? Go.
Have you found that your methods for directing have changed since starting in the
Yeah, mellowed.
80s as our industry changes and what we write is different today?
No, the need to tell stories is the same thing, and the bottom line for writing is the same thing. You have to have a story that's compelling, characters that people can care about, and basically tell your story honestly. That has to stay the same. Whether that we shoot you on film, or I shoot you on tape, or I'm now in high definition, whatever that's all about, whether I'm shooting you in front of a live audience or putting you into a situation as a feature would be shot with one camera, still the same thing for them. You've got to be able to create characters that mean something and tell a story that's cogent. Even if it's a strange story, it has to be somewhat cogently told. Otherwise, it's just a strange story. It doesn't get you any place either. But as far as my own style of directing, since I'm actor-centric, it's always been the same for me. Maybe I'm lucky in that sense. When I work theater, the same way. I'm trying to build things around the actors. When I'm doing sitcom, it's around the actors. When I did features, it was around the actors. So therefore, I was not being thrown by... In the Disney Channel, I have more concerns about than I ever had doing anything else. The Disney Channel, because they're trying to appeal to children between the ages of 6 and 14. There are special effects going on. There is green screen going on. I've got stunt work up the kibosh. I've got all kinds of stuff. I have on set with me consistently on Casey Undercover. I have stunt coordinators. I have visual effects coordinators. I have visual effects, computer graphics coordinators, all with the show, who are there the entire. I never had any of those people during Laverne and Shirley Morgan and Mindy Bosom Buddies. They were never around. It wasn't about what the idiom was about. But now every Casey Undercover is a spy's show. She has to have a major fight sequence that's going to happen that involves major stunt coordinators and shooting and bringing in jibs and techno cranes and all kinds of stuff to shoot. So actually, today, more than ever, I'm actually being challenged by the technology that must be necessary to do these shows to speak to younger people. But the storytelling is, actually storytelling, they sometimes cheat storytelling to get to some huge fight or, which is obviously the problem that the writers have to come up with. They have to come up with a legitimate reason why it's some kind of a case that necessitates them getting into a fight. But yeah, now I have to deal with that much more than I ever had to. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. I don't enjoy visual effects much because that happens after the process, and I don't trust those people. I mean, I was doing a stunt. There was a sequence on Casey Undercover, which was a simple kid sits on a couch. The couch springs up, and this kid goes flying. Okay? So I'm having a big fight going on between the visual effects people who say they can do this, and the stunt people, and my stunt coordinator people thinking they can do it on stage. And I immediately said, that's it, I'm doing it on stage where I can see what I've just gotten. Whereas I'm gonna wait for what? For a month and a half for some visual artist somewhere to actually fly this kid out of I said, that's not gonna happen. So that goes on, very much so. The vocabulary has been upped into areas that my vocabulary was not necessarily in when I was, but once again, like I said, in the movies, they were always actor-centric, although the movies were doing that stuff long before.
Well, I think what you've seen here today is
The oldest living director in television.
It's a full and happy life. This is Joel has experienced so many things that I hope you'll get just a taste of what he's seen, what I've seen. And this is about conducting a life.
It's a life. And the other thing that I want to warn you about, because it's one of my favorite warnings, is that don't get yourself thinking that success is the end-all be-all. Because success demands the need for the people who pay for you to replicate success. And you as an individual artist probably are not so interested in replicating success as you are as being challenged by the next artistic event of your life. And the problem is you have to be willing to say to yourself, this we're talking about your integrity from before, you may have to be willing to say to yourself, you know something, I'm going to have to buy into the fact that if I do something successfully, they're going to want me to replicate that success. And they will pay me a lot of money to replicate that success. And you as an artist of integrity have to make the choice of how far you're going to be able to play that game with them. We just had this wonderful movie, Birdman, with Michael Keaton, a buddy of mine. Now, I love that movie because I was there with Michael Keaton when he decided to give up on Batman because he didn't want to play that game anymore. Now, there was millions of dollars.
Work with that director.
Also, that's right. But there was millions of dollars involved. And he decided, that's it, went up to his home in Montana. And then basically, this is his comeback, which is essentially his story. You know? So it was really fascinating to me, but we all have to live with that. You have to understand that if you're working hard to be noticed and to be successful, once you get to that point where they call you a success, they're going to want you to replicate your success. And you have to make a decision in your brain. And if you should, I hope you have this opportunity to make that decision, to be quite honest, how long you're going to play their game before is it necessary to get on and do something in perhaps a smaller scale. But remember, the longer you play the game, the more cachet you have, the more power base you have, the more you can get smaller movies made.
That's a great example because Michael is one of the sweetest guys on earth.
What a nice
And nobody deserves this
success
more than he does. And I sent him a note saying, if Birdman had just been a Holocaust survivor, he would have won the Academy Award.
No question about it. Or if he was mentally retarded.
Correct.
We are obviously into a period where you have to be able to portray either a woman who's losing her mind through dementia, or you have to play Eddie Remaine's role of in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Or Hanks gets Forrest Gump. I mean, those are the things that attract attention. You know, although they were wonderful performances, I don't know that they were any more wonderful than others that were nominated, you know. But anyway, be prepared for the fact that you should only be successful enough to have the problem of, what the hell do I do now? That would be a very good problem to have. And my solution was to take the money and run, and I maintain my integrity. I bring it to whatever I do. I still do theater. I just finished a big musical production in LA that may be coming to New York as a Broadway show, which I directed, that I got back into, and that was a hoot to do. I work with this performance artist, Hershey Felder, and I've directed 5 shows with him now, and there's a good chance we're bringing his trilogy into New York in a year. He's done Gershwin, he's done Bernstein, and he's done Irving Berlin. And we think we can bring all those 3 shows in. And I have a ball with that. I decided that's where I'm going to keep my integrity. I'm not getting myself nuts about the fact that somebody wants to pay me a lot of money to direct an episode of television. You know, that's going to help my family. It's going to help my kids. It's going to help a lot of things. I'm fine with that. I made my peace with that a long time ago. But it's something that you will all get confronted with should you be lucky enough to sell that first one. And they say, oh, can you write another one just like it? Songwriters are doing that all the time. They get the big hit, and the next 6 songs sound vaguely like the one that got them the big hit.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you. Stay for a minute, and I want to just talk you into open the off.